Hello, welcome back to Kim's Cozy Corner. Today we are going to do some work in the kitchen. We are going to make some pie crust as well as some pizza dough for the freezer. So we have it ready on hand and we're going to cook dinner. Come with me and let's get started. Next, we're going to go ahead and make the dressing for our salad. So we're having a salad with our spaghetti meal today. And so I'm making homemade dressing. I am actually going to make a creamy citrus ginger dressing. Recipe calls for 2 ounces of plain yogurt. Looks good to me. That's a little more than 2 ounces. That's okay. It'll be all right. The next ingredient it calls for is orange juice. So I need 4 ounces. I need 4 ounces of orange juice. Houston, we have a problem. I don't have any orange juice. So I'm going to have to squeeze some oranges to get a half a cup of orange juice. First, let me just get all the other ingredients in, and then I'll squeeze the orange juice. So after the orange juice, I need 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. I need a tablespoon of vegetable oil. I need a teaspoon of minced garlic. All right, and then I need a teaspoon of ginger. After the ginger, I need a teaspoon of sugar, teaspoon and a little bit, a teaspoon of pepper, and then a dash of salt. I have everything in here with the exception of the orange juice. So let me go squeeze some oranges. And believe it or not, I have plenty of oranges. The only thing is that I really don't have anything to squeeze oranges with. So I'm going to have to do this the old-fashioned way of just doing it by hand. It's going to take me a minute, so I will fast forward through this. If I get some of the meat from the orange in there, that's okay. But it's going fast. These oranges are super, super ripe. I just happen to have a bag already cut up in the refrigerator. I just started making my homemade dressing. I've only been making homemade dressing now for, I don't know, about 3 or 4 months. And didn't realize how easy it was. And I get to experiment and mix it a little different every time. So I'm enjoying this part of it. All right, let me go clean my hands up and we'll pour this together and get it mixed up. So I'm going to double check my recipe as well. So as far as double checking the recipe, let me get the orange juice in first. And there's my orange juice. All right. And just so you know, my recipe, it's not like I got this from scratch, unfortunately, but Azure Standard also has other things besides food. So on Azure Standard's website, I found these wonderful dressing containers, and it has recipes all around. And so if I want to make Italian herb dressing, there's a recipe for it right there on the bottle, right? Creamy Caesar, vinaigrettes are on here as well, sesame, honey mustard. This is the one I'm making right here, the creamy citrus ginger. And it tells you what to put in. So shake the container and now you have homemade salad dressing. So that's everything you need for homemade salad dressing. This is a different salad dressing I already have going in my refrigerator so that I try to keep something going. So when I make my salad, I have something versus pulling out one of those bottles processed from the grocery store. So I try to keep something going, try to keep a ranch dressing in there at all times, as well as some type of vinaigrette. So let's get this one mixed up. Let's double check the recipe first. Everything's in there. The most important thing when mixing up your dressing is making sure the top's closed. I've learned from experience. The plain yogurt puts a little depth, a little thickness to it without flavor. So the flavor's all in the orange juice, the lemon juice, the ginger, right? The garlic, all of those items. A very light dressing with probably half the calories of the stuff you buy in the store. Let me give it a taste test. Now, I've tried to do this without following a recipe before, and I have made a mess. But this time I followed the recipe, so let's see what we got. Let me try a little more. It's not bad. Okay, there it is. I couldn't taste the ginger at first. So I am actually going to add a little more ginger. Since I put the little pieces of the orange in there, I probably changed the depth of that ginger. So I've got some more ginger. Let's put a little more garlic in there as well. And a little more salt. And we should be good. Let's give it another mix with the top closed. Oh, that's good. Oh, that tastes really good. All right, we are set. Dressing's done for the day. All right, since I'm already in the kitchen, I thought about just making a pound cake for dinner as well, since I'm in here. Some of the things that I already have going, I already have my bread machine running in the other room. I moved it to the other room so it wouldn't make so much noise while I'm in here. So I'm making French bread to go along with the spaghetti. And I thought about making dessert as well, just a very simple pound cake. So that'll be the next task that we'll get to. For the pound cake, the first thing that I need to do is preheat my oven to 350. So let me do that first. All right. And so then as far as the recipe goes, my grandmother used to make the best pound cake. She would say that, oh, it's just something I threw together. It's sweet bread. Oh, it's not good. It was delicious. And so I have her recipe, which I will be following, that I have on a card here. But she used this book here. The front page is gone. And you know, this is pre-Google days, right? How did they make their recipes? They made their recipes based on what other people were doing. So my grandmother had this book of recipes, and it was something that the local women in the area put together, compiled by Martha Smith Allen. It had a yellow cover on it. You know, I don't even know if any of these people are still alive today, but it has a ton of recipes in here. Everything from main dishes to desserts to pies to cookies, all kinds of things in here. And I've tried lots of these recipes over the years, tweaked them, made them my own, but this was my starting space, because this is where my grandmother would go when she didn't already have a recipe. So just wanted to share that with you. I learned a lot of different things, like how to even set a table. I had no clue how to set a table. And this book had pictures in here telling me how to set a table. It does conversions of, you know, ounces to cups and that kind of stuff. So it was kind of like a one-stop shop for everything when I was a young teenager, first learning how to cook, and then in my early 20s. So I still have a copy of this book. I don't even know if I can get another copy, but I'm trying to protect it as much as I can. So I've been pulling recipes out of here, putting them on index cards for the next generation behind me. So when my kids and my nieces and hopefully one day grandchildren, you know, when I cook, they can use my cards of where I've tweaked the recipes and made on my own. The first thing it says I need to do is cream my sugar, my Crisco, and my butter. So I'm going to put 3 cups of sugar in. Now I've had the butter and the eggs sitting out, getting to room temperature. Figured it was a good idea to just put it in some smaller pieces. It's super soft, but might as well cut it down. After we get this pound cake going, because it's going to have to cook for an hour, then I'm going to make some pie crusts. And then I need a half a cup of Crisco. You know, you can use oil, you can use whatever you prefer. And I think a half cup's a bit much, but that's grandma's recipe. So I cut it back just a little bit. So I use just under a half cup. Let's start creaming our ingredients. So while that's creaming, so 3 cups of sugar, 1 cup of butter, and real butter, not margarine, real butter, and just under a half a cup of Crisco. And so it's creaming. I'll let it do its thing over here. I'm going to add 6 eggs. Once I have this all creamed, I'm going to add the 6 eggs one at a time, beating in between them. I'm going to also add 3 cups of flour, just in case you're taking notes, because I found out some people were taking notes. 1 cup of milk, pinch of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of flavor, whatever kind of flavor you want to add, because this can be a vanilla cake. It can be just a sweet bread cake where usually that's like vanilla and lemon mixed together. You know, it could be an almond cake, right? Whatever flavor you want to add. So I'm going to make it a sweet cake. So I'm going to put both my homemade vanilla and lemon in it. I've already greased and floured my loaf pan. Not loaf pan, but I don't know, whatever you call this thing here. Pound cake. We called it the pound cake pan. You know, from where I am, where I'm from, we call this the pound cake pan. All right. I believe we have creamed this well enough to start adding the eggs. Some people add the eggs at the same time. I can't do it. I always make a mess. So I'm going to add the eggs. And then in between each one I add, I'll beat it for a little bit. I tell you what, we'll do 2 at a time to speed up this process just a little bit. Depending on the size of your eggs, you may not need 6. The recipe calls for 6 medium eggs. I actually have large eggs and they're actually pretty big. So I think I'm going to back off my eggs and go down to 5 eggs, just 5, instead of 6, because these are some pretty big eggs. And it calls for 6 medium eggs. So 5 large to replace the 6 medium. So I only need to add 1 more because I already have 4 in there. So we'll add 1 more. All right, I will keep letting that go. I'm going to wash the eggs off my hands. It is important that the eggs are beat very well in this recipe. My grandmother's pound cake is it's not one of those light and fluffy and airy cakes, right? It's puts me in more in the mind of like a coffee cake. It's a more dense cake. It's not heavy, but it's a more dense cake, and it's a more delicious cake. I love it. So the eggs are almost whipped in very well. After we beat in these eggs, we're going to start alternating between the flour and the milk. Having a great mixer makes such a big difference in the quality and the outcome of your baked goods. So if you don't do anything else, invest in a good mixer. There are many different brands out there. I actually love the KitchenAid brand. My grandmother used to use a KitchenAid brand, and I like it, but there are other great brands out there as well. This just happens to be the one I know. All right, let's start folding in this flour and milk. And again, I like to turn it off. I just don't like ingredients flying all over the place. So there's 1 cup. Put a little bit of the milk in it. And for the milk, you can use heavy whipping cream. You can use evaporated milk, half and half, regular milk. It's up to you. I do half heavy whipping cream and then the other half of just whatever milk I have, 2% whole, whatever I have on hand. All right, we're going to add the 2nd cup. My grandmother would be so mad at me right now because I didn't sift the flour first. So she sifted the flour before she made every cake. I never sift my flour. I don't know if there's a need to do it anymore like it was back in the day. The technology is so much better today than it was back then. I don't know if it would make it fluffier. It's just the step that I don't take. But my cakes still come out pretty good most of the time. I do make a mess sometimes. All right, let's add the last of the flour and the last of the milk. I'm continuing to move the ingredients I've already used to the other side. Here's the milk. And we can't forget the last items, which is a little bit of salt. It says a pinch of salt, so let's do half a teaspoon. And typically I measure this out pretty close. So I'm going to assume that I have just enough milk, just enough flour. I know that last cup of flour looked like it was rounded a little bit. Only reason I did that was because the first 2 cups that I put in, they weren't full cups. So I just wanted to make up the difference. Typically this works and it comes out well. I'm going to make sure that I beat this very well so that it's not heavy. And sometimes you have a dark color in your cake. That typically means you didn't beat it well enough. So I want to make sure that it's beat very well. I'm going to go ahead and add the flavor. I like to put my baking powder in last because I prefer to not beat that so well. I want to slowly kind of fold that in. I will do it on the mixer though. I'm not going to hand fold it in, but I always put that in last versus mixing it and beating it so hard. So we're going to put in a half teaspoon of lemon, and I'm going to put a whole teaspoon of my vanilla. I like it a little stronger on the vanilla side. I don't want this splashing all over me, so let me turn that off. I'm not even going to measure it. I don't know why I'm even pretending like I do, because I don't. I call it a splash of vanilla. So before I get done, I always like to scrape the sides of the bowl, make sure that it's mixed in really well. So let's scrape the sides of the bowl. All right, so I'm going to add the last ingredient, which is just the baking powder, and slowly stir that in. And then we'll be ready to load this right into the pan. The baking powder is 1 teaspoon. And again, I'm just slowly folding that in versus beating it, like on a high speed. I'm just going to stir. All right, let's give it another good mix. Make sure we're mixed all the way through. And fill our pan. If you notice, this batter is very thick. And that's probably why this is so dense. More like a coffee cake, I guess you would say. But it will be delicious. When I was younger and I would make this recipe when my grandmother was still alive, I don't know, young people just seem to be in such a big hurry to do everything. And I was no different, right? So I would mix it really quick and say, oh, I'm good. Everything's great. And it wouldn't come out right. It would have these gummy areas in it. And I would ask my grandmother, I'm like, why does mine not come out like yours? And she would be quick to tell me it's because I had no patience and I didn't want to. I was in such a hurry to do everything. So she was telling me that I wouldn't mix it long enough. Right? I wouldn't cream the butter and the sugar and everything really well, or I wouldn't mix my eggs good enough. So as I've gotten older, I have a little more patience and I like the process versus rushing the process. So, and we are ready to put it in the oven. So the oven's fully preheated and the cake will stay in the oven for at least an hour. We will check on it at about 50 minutes just to make sure everything is going well, but we have a full hour. We don't want to open this up. Let me set my timer. Let's move over now and make those pie crusts. The first thing though I need to do is clean up the mess that I just made over here. So I'll see you back here after I clean up my mess. All right, I am ready to get started with the pie crust. I'm going to use my Vitamix blender in place of a food processor to do this next step for the pie crust. Pie crusts are super, super easy. My mic was off and I've already put some ingredients in here. So let me tell you what I did. The first thing I did was I need to add 2.5 cups of flour. Let's make sure I didn't lose track of where I was. I believe I'm only at 1 cup, which I am. I'm only at 1 cup. And I need to add another 1.5 cups. So 2.5 cups of flour. And the next thing I'm going to add is a teaspoon of salt and 2 tablespoons of sugar. This is a half tablespoon, so I need to do 2 tablespoons. And I like a little extra. I like my crust to be sweet. I'll put an extra one in there. And that's all of the ingredients except for the butter. So let's give this a little mix. Just to mix these ingredients together. All right, so those ingredients have been mixed together. Very simple mixture. And now we're going to add butter. So my butter was actually frozen this morning. I threw it in the refrigerator just so it would be soft enough for me to cut, but it's still very, very cold. And so this is a cup of butter. I diced it up into some smaller pieces to help with the consistency that I'm getting ready to try to create. So let's put the top back on there. And I'm going to blend this up just so I can keep some butter chunks. So let's pulse it instead. There's still some pretty big chunks. I'm going to do it just a little bit more. The chunks of butter is what makes your pie crust flaky. So I believe we're good. And that's the only thing we're using the blender for. From now, I got to get to a bowl and I got to be able to whisk this up with my trusty fork in cold water. I'll be right back. Okay. Let's see if I can bring you in close. I don't know if you can tell it or not, but there are like pea-sized chunks of butter in there. And so now I'm going to take a half a cup of ice water and I'm going to mix it with my fork. You want your water to be ice cold. So I literally have ice cubes in this water. I just use my fork because all we want to do is get it to the point where it sticks together. If it's sticking together, you might be able to see better the chunks of butter. But it's only supposed to be a half cup. That's just your starting point, though. I believe we're there. All right, I'm going to put just a teeny bit more water. And according to my glass here, I'm not quite at a half cup anyway. You see the chunks? See how chunky it's looking now? Those chunks are the butter pieces. So let's see if we can press it together. Not quite. Not quite. I have to put a little more water in it. You want to go very slow with the water because if you put too much water in it, it messes up the overall consistency. So going very slow is very, very important. All right. I think we're ready to move to the next step. You see how it's stuck together like a ball? See that? That's what we're going for. For the next step, I'm going to use plastic wrap to try to help press this together. So wish me luck. Let's see how we do. I don't know if you can see. You cannot see. Let's move me around here. So I'm using this plastic wrap to help press, but my plastic wrap is a little too narrow. Let's take half of it off and put it on a separate sheet. So we can work with a manageable amount. So I'm using the plastic wrap to give me a disc, but my plastic wrap is too short, which is the problem. Then realized my plastic wrap was too narrow. All right, let's do this again. All right. So let's look at our work to see how we did. Ah, that came out pretty good. So it's pressed together nicely. Little specks of butter in it. And now this one is probably perfect for one pie crust. So I'm going to leave it the way it is. And I need to hurry because the butter is getting warm. So let me get me a fresh piece of plastic wrap here. And put this over here so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm calling this good. So there's one. Let me put it in the freezer and let's come back and work on this other one. All right, we got it pressed together, but it's definitely more than one pie crust in here. I think I'm going to just cut it in half and reshape it. Because the last time I did this, I had way too much from a pie crust standpoint. I make 8-inch pie crusts or pies. It was like enough crust for like a 9-inch pie. It worked last time. And so we're going to move this back over here, fold it back on itself because we are going to re-press it together. And then the same thing with this one here. So that one's perfect. And there's the last one. So this was only supposed to make 2 pie crusts. I was able to get 3 out of it, which I think is great because my pie pans are very small compared to like a big 9-inch. Now I'm done. I've already made 4 pizza crusts and each one makes 2 pizzas. So that's like 8 pizza crusts. I've made 3 pie crusts. I have a pound cake in the oven. I've made a creamy citrus ginger dressing for dinner. And the only thing left to make is spaghetti. It's been a productive day in the kitchen. Let me clean up my mess so I can get ready for the next item that we're going to work on. All right, my timer just went off, so my cake has been cooking for 50 minutes. So let's open it up and let's see how it's doing. All right, the top of it's still really jiggly, so we're not even close to being done. We're probably going to have to go for another 30 minutes. Set a timer for 20 minutes. So in 20 minutes, we will come back and see if we are ready to do the toothpick test, or some people call it the fork test. But for now, we need to cook for about 20 more minutes, but it's smelling great. Okay, we're ready to start the spaghetti. Our goal is to eat today at 2 o'clock. It is 10 after 1. I like my spaghetti sauce to simmer for just a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and get that spaghetti sauce going. It's going to be it's going to come together very quickly. So I'm heating up the Dutch oven. For the spaghetti, I am going to use onion. I've already browned some ground beef as well as some Italian sausage together. I did that last night as I made pizza for my family. So I already have ground beef and Italian sausage ready to go. My onion are already diced. And then I will be using my tomatoes from last year. This is actually a roasted garlic, pepper, onion mix for my spaghetti sauce. And I'm going to add a few more seasonings because I did not season the meat yesterday. Okay, the Dutch oven is hot. So I'm going to put just a little, not that I need oil, but I want to put a little bit of oil in here because even though I have roasted garlic and peppers and onion, I want some fresh onion added to it. So This is is this a cup? Half cup? I think that's a cup. Just a few more onion since there's onion already in the mix. So we don't need much more. Put just a little bit of salt, sweat the water out. And I'm going to cook it just until the onion becomes translucent. And then I'm ready to go ahead and put the meat in. And the meat has already been cooked. It's already browned, so that'll go very quickly. Now, while I was in the refrigerator, I found some leftover summer sausage. So I'm going to add the summer sausage to the Italian sausage and the ground beef blend, just so that we're not wasting any food. So I'm going to let these onions cook for about, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes. And then we will come back and add in the meat. All right, so those onions have been sweating. They're kind of a translucent color, and now I'm going to go ahead and add the meat. The meat has already been browned, so it's already cooked. We used this mixture on pizza yesterday, and we made up extra, so I put some in a freezer bag. So the next time we want pizza, all I got to do is pull it right out of that bag and put it on top of the pizza, and we don't have to cook meat the next time. Here's that handful of summer sausage. Now, I normally season my meat pretty heavy, but last year when I did my canning, I got a little heavy-handed with the salt. So I'm going to season with everything except for salt until I get it all mixed together to make sure that it's not too salty. So we're going to let this meat cook for a few minutes. Really, all I'm doing is reheating the meat. The summer sausage, of course, is already cooked, but let's get this all warmed up and then we will add to the mixture. I have the ground beef, the Italian sausage, and the summer sausage cooking nicely. It's actually nice and hot now. I'm going to go ahead and put all of the seasoning in except for salt. So I'm going to put a little bit of garlic powder. Now remember, I have seasoning already in the sauce, so I don't want to do too much on this side. There's some pepper. All right, we need a little oregano, because oregano wasn't on the label, so there's no oregano in it. The top of the jar didn't say there was any basil in it, so we're going to put some basil in it. There's my timer for the cake. This is looking good. Let's let those seasons cook in a little bit there. I'm going to add a little bit of chili powder. I like chili powder in mine. Let's add just a little bit of chili powder. Now, this base that I have, this sauce that I have, it can be used for chili. It can be used for spaghetti sauce. It can be used for a lot of different things. So it's really just a base, and then you add to it. So I'm going to go ahead and add some Worcestershire sauce to it, if I even said that right, but I'm sure you know what I mean. And then we're going to need to get our eyes on that cake. Let's let this continue to simmer here. I'm going to add the sauce in just a moment, but I want to check on that cake first. All right, let's open this oven and let's check on this cake. So hopefully you can see that. So I put the toothpick in. The toothpick came out clean. Check it in a couple more places. Came out clean. So this cake is actually done, but I am going to put it back in here. I like my grandmother's pound cake to have like a crust around the edges of it. So we're going to turn the oven off and we're going to leave it in the oven for about 10 more minutes. And now let's get back to the spaghetti sauce. All right, we're back over here to the spaghetti sauce, and it's like 125 almost 1:30, which will give my spaghetti sauce 30 minutes to simmer if I can get it on right now. So let's get it going. And everything will end right on time. I had the breads on the timer, so the French bread will be done at 2 o'clock on the nose. Look at that. Nice and rich. Let's get that other jar in there. So I put 2 quart jars in there, and I probably had 2 pounds of meat. So between the ground beef, the Italian sausage, I probably had at least 2 pounds of meat in here. So let's let this cook just a little bit here. We will do a taste test. It's already super thick, so it's not going to need to really cook down, but we do want to cook it for about 30 minutes so that all of those ingredients merge together. All right, there's a few more ingredients outside of salt I need to add. One is cumin. I forgot I didn't have it out. I like a touch of brown sugar just to give it a little sweetness. So let me give it another stir here as it's warming up. Nice and rich. I tell you what, this looks really, really good. Smells good too. Let's let it simmer just a little bit. I'll come back, I'll give it a taste test, and then we'll determine if we need to add salt or any other ingredients. My timer just went off for the cake. So it's been in the oven, the warm oven, for 10 minutes, and now we're going to move it over to the cooling rack. So we will let it cool for 10 minutes, and then we will pop it out. Okay, I'm back to our spaghetti sauce, so I'm going to give it a taste test now, and we'll see how we're doing. It actually tastes very, very good, but guess what? I'm putting some more salt in it. Yep, needs salt. Not much, but it does need salt. And that's it. That's all it needs. It's delicious. And so I am going to turn it all the way down to a simmer now. We are about 15 minutes from meal time. So I am going to, like I said, turn this all the way down to a simmer, and then I'm going to get that spaghetti going. All right, so the cake has been cooling for at least 10 minutes on this cooling rack here. So I'm going to dump it out. Now, my biggest issue with cakes is when I dump them out, they always tear up. So wish me luck. I greased, I floured, I followed the instructions. So hopefully this cake pops out. So let's turn it over and get it cooling on the rack. I did it! I did. Okay. This teeny little piece broke off because it hit my glove. So guess what? I need to do a taste test. That means it's time to do a quality check. So let's see how it tastes. Oh my goodness, this is delicious. This is absolutely delicious. But look, it's pretty. Very pretty. And it hit my glove, so that's my fault, not the cake's fault. All right, let me get back over here and finish cooking this spaghetti. All right, I'm ready to wrap up today. So let's talk about everything that we got done today. One of the first things that we did, we made pizza dough. So each one of these packs will make 2 pizza crusts. So that's 8 pizza crusts ready to go. I made 3 pie crusts. I baked a loaf of French bread. I baked a pound cake. And I made spaghetti sauce. And so we've had a busy day in the kitchen. I've had fun hanging out with you. Thank you for joining me today. Please give me a thumbs up if you like the content. Please subscribe to the channel. I've been up and running now for about 2 months. I'm having a blast. I hope you are too. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.